Welcome back to Clear Cut. The Trump administration has been trying for months to get the top European powers to join the U.S. in taking a harder line on Iran. Well, tonight, we could be closer to that actually happening. Statements have been made in just the last few hours by Great Britain, France, and Germany, all blaming Iran for last weekend's attacks on two key Saudi oil sites. It's still not clear whether that unified condemnation will lead to new sanctions or any kind of tough response from Europe against Tehran, but many say statements like this certainly set the stage for just that kind of response. Meanwhile, the long-suffering saga of the British oil tanker Stena Impero may finally be over. Iran's Revolutionary Guard seized the tanker in July and have been holding it ever since. But today, an Iranian government spokesman said the tanker is free to leave, but so far there is no evidence the tanker has actually begun to leave Iranian waters. Joining me now to talk about the latest with Iran are Dr. Foroughtun. He's the chairman of the board of the Iran Liberation Congress, and former Naval Intelligence Officer John Jordan. Welcome to you both. John Jordan, now to you. Pretty significant development having other world leaders condemn Iran and formally blame the country for the Saudi oil attack.
Absolutely, it's enormously significant. The Iranian regime has been putting a great deal of effort into trying to drive the United States and the Europeans apart. They had big hopes for the Instex payment system to bypass the U.S. banking systems and circumvent sanctions. They were hoping the Europeans would put pressure on the United States to return to the bargaining table and relax the maximum pressure sanctions regime. But it looks like the EU and Europe is drawing closer to the United States. That is devastating to Iran. And the maximum pressure campaign has devastated the Iranian economy. The rial has lost over 3/4 of its value. The Iranian economy is in free fall, and there is no end in sight, especially with Europe moving more closer to the United States on this issue.
Sure. Imran, is the noose tightening around Iran with more countries joining the U.S. in taking a stand against the country?
It absolutely is. The fact that Boris Johnson came out yesterday and actually blamed Iran for the attack, and obviously the European Union, this is something, as an Iranian American, as someone who's been working towards the freedom of Iran with my colleagues for the last 20 years, the first time that this is happening. For the last 40 years or so, U.S. has been haven't had any relationship with Iran, but Germany, UK, and France, they have had, and this is a very, very big development. Definitely, we know that the economy is in shambles in Iran, and we know that they're desperate to do anything that they can. And I would not I would hesitate to think that Iran will actually start attacking U.S. assets or whatever, because they think that the only thing that may save them is some kind of a war, and they hope that maybe they can get something out of it.
John Jordan, now to you. Is war next, or is Iran just spouting lip service, saying, you know, that the ship Stena Impero is free to leave, and denying any real impact for these other countries that are denouncing it?
Well, certainly Iran would like a U.S. or Western attack on Iran. They would like the propaganda victory. They would like to play the victim. They'd like an environmental mess, probably dead civilians, anything they can to build political pressure in the United States for relaxation of the sanctions regime, or to drive a wedge between the U.S. and Europe. That was always kind of what they were trying to do, is to provoke that sort of disproportionate response that they could use for propaganda purposes. President Trump didn't give it to them. Now, if I was a betting man here, I think the Iranians understand now that politically this is starting to move away from them, and that any attack by Iran and any response by the United States isn't going to be met with the same level of international condemnation that they would hope. So I think there's a chance that there's going to be some, with a bit of fig leaf, perhaps some face saving, some feelers to come to a meeting with the United States and try to negotiate. But they have to do so in such a way as to placate the hardliners in Tehran, and so as to not appear weak or have a massive loss of face at home.
Iman, should President Trump and Hassan Rouhani get together here and try to kind of tamp down on the tensions?
Well, meetings are always good, but basically the United States and President Trump have laid out 12 different conditions for this to happen. The last agreement that Iran had with the Islamic Republic had with the international community, it was actually not worth it because nothing to control their missiles, their terrorist activities and whatever. Right. And I would hope that President Trump does not attack but does not let go of these sanctions because the regime is on its knees, and with the support that the Iranians and the freedom fighters have inside Iran, and with the coalition that we're building outside for a government in shadow inside and government in exile, the Iranian Americans and Iranians all around the world, they are ready to support the freedom-loving people of Iran, and finally, after 40 years, getting rid of this brutal regime that has brought terrorism and everything bad for the world, Middle East, and of course the Iranian people.
But if the regime has been, eradicated, I mean, then who would step up to lead?
Like I mentioned, there's actually a very large coalition of organizations, and we are looking for a democratic coalition to bring all sides together to actually first think about to get rid of the regime, to have a calm country, to be able to prevent any kind of anarchy after that, and then after a peaceful period, then we can actually have the democratic elections and people can decide what type of government they want in the future, whether it's a parliamentary monarchy or the parliamentary republic, and then select their leaders.
And John Jordan, as far as the Strait of Hormuz, where this ship Steno Impero was seized, is that waterway any safer today than it was when the ship and others were taken?
Yes, I think the waterway is safer. I mean, there's certainly the United States, the UK, Australia, and probably soon to be others, building a naval presence there to ensure the safe, secure, and free passage of international shipping through that critically important choke point. So I think that by virtue of the presence of a naval force there, and I think the Iranians realize that, interfering with this and stopping ships and dragging them into Iranian waters is not going to be politically productive for them. In fact, may actually be counterproductive. The Iranians realize that. So I actually think that the odds of a naval confrontation have fallen somewhat.
All right. Iman and John, stick with me. I want to get your take on some other news out of Iran, including the chance of direct talks between the U.S. and Iran. So stick with me on that. And for more, though, let's go to our Washington correspondent, Shayna Stulin, and she is live with me at the UN. Shayna, so how likely is a meeting between President Trump and President Rouhani?
Oh, that's the big question right here, right now at the UN headquarters on this Monday evening as world leaders gathered here for the kickoff of the UN General Assembly. Will President Trump and President Rouhani meet? Given that the two men are going to be at the same building here, the UN's this funny little diplomatic island in New York where even when the U.S. is fighting or not getting along with another country, per a UN agreement, leaders from that country, diplomats from that country, have to be allowed to come in here. So we know Rouhani landed in the U.S. a couple of hours ago. He's going to be making his way to the UN headquarters tomorrow. Likely he's giving a speech on Wednesday. But experts I spoke with, they don't see a meeting happening this week here at the UN. It just doesn't seem very likely. It's a long shot. But President Trump, he didn't rule it out when he spoke to reporters this morning.
See what happens. We have a long way to go. We'll see what happens. We're doing just fine. We're doing very well with the economy. Some numbers came out that are fantastic. Our economy now is better than anybody's in the world, and it has been for the last 2 years. But we're doing very well. And as far as the meeting is concerned, we'll see what happens.
So you heard the president at the beginning there saying what he likes to say often, we'll see what happens. Now, France's president, Emmanuel Macron, he's working overtime, meeting with Rouhani. He's going to be meeting with President Trump back and forth, trying to get the two men to agree to meet. But even if they don't, remember, there are groups of diplomats here from the United States, from France, from Iran. They could pass messages back and forth between the other groups, perhaps to set up a meeting for the future.
And Shayna, clearly what President Trump says or doesn't say about Iran at the UN will be very telling, right?
Sure, he's making his big speech tomorrow morning after Brazil. Brazil is the first on the list. Then comes President Trump and the United States giving their speech. He has said that he will be talking about Iran. No surprise, given how urgent the crisis is. Certainly after we saw Iran allegedly, well, now more countries saying, attacking a Saudi Arabian oil facility. amenities. It'll certainly help the president's case against Iran now that the UK, France, Germany have all come out with a joint statement blaming Iran for those attacks. But it'll be interesting to see, Derek, which President Trump comes out to speak tomorrow, because he sort of played this good cop, bad cop routine with Iran. Sometimes he's threatening military option. Sometimes he says, I want to talk to Rehani and I could be his best friend one day. So we'll really be looking to see what kind of speech he gives in regard to that. He's also used the UN as a platform to go after leaders. He did that to North Korea's Kim Jong-un 2 years ago, calling him Rocket Man. Is he going to take the same approach to Rouhani, or is he going to, again, offer an olive branch and perhaps set conditions for a meeting? So all eyes on what happens here tomorrow morning.
All right, Washington correspondent Shayna Stulin live for us at the United Nations. So now let's go back to our panel. Dr. Iman Forough, chair of the Iran Liberation Congress, and former Naval Intelligence Officer John Jordan. Iman, what do you advise President Trump to do about Iran? I mean, first, should he meet with him at the United Nations?
Obviously, President Trump can meet with Rouhani, but our advice to President Trump and the United States and European countries is that you need to support the people of Iran morally. They're waiting, they're chanting in the streets and sending messages to us, thanking President Trump that after 40 years, he's the first president who has brought us all to this point. So the Iranian people are the people who have been suffering, they've been made, they've been tortured, they've been jailed and everything. And the best way to get rid of terrorism in the Middle East and all these bad things that are happening is a regime change. And regime change not by a military attack, but supporting the people of Iran. They will take care of it. There's enough support inside and outside to get this. If there was one thing we needed, is free Wi-Fi that had been promised from the time of Mrs. Clinton. Right. People need to get online, and we'll see what comes out of all the bad things that are happening inside Iran.
Sure, access to information is helpful for everyone, really. Yes. John Jordan, President Trump appears to be, I would say, hesitant, or at least taking a measured approach with Iran, similar to what he did with Saudi Arabia over the murder of journalist Jamal Khashoggi. Why is Trump so hesitant to take a stand when other world leaders are being more decisive?
No, I think President Trump is being very decisive. He's being very hard on the Iranians. He did withdraw from the JCPOA and incurred the outrage of the foreign policy establishment in pretty much every developed country. I think he's been very tough. He has been, however, very measured. He didn't play into the Iranian hands, the Iranian trap, by launching an attack. And that was very, very smart. Here's what to look forward to at the UN. Neither President Rouhani nor President Trump are going to want to appear to be the one desirous of a meeting. The optics of this are very, very important. There's a great saying, and as a lawyer, first liar never has a chance. So neither one wants to appear to be wanting the meeting, but both do kind of want one at least to happen. So wouldn't surprise me if there's some sort of circumstances where they bump into each other and both sides can save face. I wouldn't surprise me at all if that happened.
Sure. And Iran, I mean, Iran's mission, at least Rouhani's mission at the UN, seems to be to get other countries on board on its side against the U.S. and other allied nations. Is he likely to get that kind of support?
Absolutely not. We already know if the other countries were going to support Iran, they would have continued buying oil from Iran, and Iran would not be in this place where it is right now, basically financially. So I don't think it will happen. And President Trump, I hope he does not meet with Rouhani, because we know the propaganda machine inside Iran. Inside Iran, they will say, oh, Trump blamed, the U.S. is afraid, and all that stuff. Right. So it's best for that to not happen. Perhaps maybe they will bump into each other in a hallway, and at least that will maybe calm down any bad things happening in the Middle East in the short term.
All right. Iman Forough and John Jordan, thank you both.